What's up, guys? This is Ryan, and I got Mr. Matthew Bellman joining me today as well.
Hey guys, what's happening?
So, if we just put out an MLB video for today, but if you haven't watched it, which most of you probably haven't, we are going to start doing more videos together. You should. Some of these won't be public yet, but you guys should all go subscribe to Matthew's channel as well. So he'll have some solo videos he does. I'll continue to do some of my own, but we'll do a lot of these videos together. And in the not too distant future, guys, I would actually encourage starting to bring some of you guys on here. If you want to have some fun and come on a Google Hangout for a day with us and do a video, I have no problem with you guys doing this at all. If any of you guys want to talk golf, MMA, or any of that shit, let me know. I'm more than happy to invite you guys on to do this. I think that'd be some fun-ass stuff, man. But this is the wide receiver video. I am going to share my screen. So this should add something for you guys to help you learn a little bit, since you can now see what the heck I'm talking about. And we will go from there. All right, guys. For those of you actually watching, you can now see my screen as we go down receiver by receiver. And we'll start at the top. Just to kick it off, Matt, what do you think of Odell Beckham Jr. this week?
I mean, I like ODB a lot. I really like him a lot here. It's hard not to like him in this spot. I don't think he's a must or anything. The Giants are in desperation mode. So are the Chargers, for that matter. But the Giants are at home. I like them in this game. I think they move the ball well. Eli looked a lot better the second half of the game on Sunday. I like him here. I don't think he's a must. I actually probably like Antonio Brown a little bit more, only because, and I'm speaking in GPP, only because everyone's all over Le'Veon Bell for good reason, but that means they're not going to be on Antonio Brown as much.
Okay. Here's my thoughts on the top two guys. I probably won't touch either of them this week, specifically because I got Le'Veon Bell is a really, really good way to go. If you look at Jacksonville, and this is one way for you guys to easily check stats, and I play all my fantasy leagues on ESPN.com, but you go over to Antonio Brown. If you go under free agent pickups and take away not just available, but look at all, you look at how Jacksonville does. Jacksonville is #1 against wide receivers. They've given up 1 touchdown all season long. It was in the second half to the DeAndre Hopkins right after Watson came in. But outside of that, and now granted, Tennessee, Baltimore, and the Jets are not teams chalked up with good receivers, but Jacksonville is good against wide receivers. So if you are going to go Brown, I would only do it in a GPP format. And I play Brown at least once a weekend. This might be a weekend where I would stay away from him because Jacksonville is really good against the pass and not very good against the run. So I see it as a week to spend up on running back. And I don't have any of the top 3 receivers as guys that I'm targeting this week.
You know, I think you're right. You just got me completely off Brown. I really wasn't on him anyways. Le'Veon Bell is definitely the better play. And you know how my mind works. I'm very contrarian thinking. I just think, oh, Le'Veon's going to be very popular. Antonio Brown's not. Whenever a guy like Antonio Brown is not popular, I have interest. But like you always say, there's no need to get cute on a slate like this. And my #1 wide receiver is Jordy Nelson. So I'm not going to pay up for any of these guys probably.
Yep. And I'm going to skip all 3 of the top guys and tell you that I would agree that Jordy Nelson's probably, in my opinion, the top overall wide receiver on the slate. So let me get into a quick diatribe here about the Green Bay Packers. As obviously I live in Green Bay. I've actually had the weird coincidence the last couple of times I've gone to my son's baseball game. I got an opportunity to talk to Rob Domofsky. He apparently his kid plays for one of the other teams. And for those of you who don't know Andy, he's one of the beat writers for the Packers, and he does some work for ESPN.com and things like that. And I had a good chance to talk to him the last couple of times. Not really the point, but Nelson is relatively matchup proof. And what I mean by that is unless you go up against like the Cardinals where he's going to be shadowed by Patrick Peterson, I think you can play him in every single slate. And he is as consistent as they come. Him and Aaron know each other about as well as anybody there is out there. He scores touchdowns, game in and game out outside of the Atlanta Falcons game. And he gets consistent targets. There's so much chemistry there. I would say he's a really, really safe bet for 20 points again. And if you go look at what Dallas has been doing against receivers, click right here to check it out easily. They currently rank 25th against opposing wide receivers. And if you look at the game 1 against the Giants, they did a good job, but that was the game they were without ODB. Eli looked terrible. just awful. But then you slide down to the games below that. And one of the reasons I love football is you don't get stuck into these situations where you're trying to look at these bulk statistics. You can individually go look at each and every game, and you can tell really quickly which statistics are real and which ones are fraudulent. They gave up plenty of they got their butts kicked by Denver, and Denver ran all over the place, yet they still gave up 2 touchdowns to wide receivers. The next week, Larry Fitzgerald went absolutely insane as the #1 wide receiver. They had no way to cover him. Next week, Todd Gurley did a lot of damage, so they didn't really need – and it's not like the Rams have like this elite #1 wide receiver. Watkins is only 4 games into his career there. So they don't have much experience against real #1s this year, but they're still ranking very poorly against wide receivers. So I think Jordy Nelson, to me, is the top overall wide receiver on this slate. No questions about it. And one of the things that's really good for Green Bay's offense this week is it sounds like we're going to get a lot of people back. I wouldn't be surprised if both of our tackles play. And you've seen Aaron succeed so far this year without having starting tackles. It's been getting no time to throw the ball. Imagine giving him time to throw the ball and what he's going to do. If both tackles play, there's a really good chance I go with Aaron and Cash this week.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like you like Jordy a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I think Jordy's a very solid play.
I'm going to just keep it really simple with Jordy. And to me, this Green Bay Dallas game is the premier offensive game on the slate, and Jordy's the best piece in that game. I got a lot of interest in other pieces, but he's just the premier piece in the best game on the slate.
Yep, and it doesn't take anything away from the other Packer wide receivers. I think both Cobb and Nelson can succeed, and it sounds like Devontae Adams likely plays. I mean, he hasn't technically gotten through concussion protocol yet, but he's been on the field. He's been doing some work. He sounds like he's fine. So I think we're going to have most of our offensive pieces. Both Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams are trying to get out there. I don't know what's happening there, and we likely don't know up until closer to game time. And one of the reasons some of my evaluation will be slow this week is finding out about the injuries for Green Bay is a gigantic part about the slate. It's really, really big.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on from that game, there's a couple guys in the 6,500 range I think are must plays for me. But looking at Keenan Allen, I actually really like him here. I don't know how popular he's going to be. I know Janoris Jenkins is really good. He's a shutdown corner. But Allen's the type of guy that just gets his no matter what. He's a really good PPR guy. I think he's one of those guys you always talk about that's really safe for catches and targets. He has 40 already in the season. I don't think he's a must, but I definitely have interest here.
Okay, and I'm going to look at Keenan Allen this way. You guys probably know by now I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. I love the bulk targets. I mean, they average 10 targets a game. That's the top thing for me. Whereas some of the other sites will try to push you into cornerback matchups. I have never had any success looking at that because you don't know who's going to match up with who. And if things aren't working, the coach goes and changes it. But what I love to look at is mass targets, and Keenan Allen gets 10 per game. That being said, I expect to see something similar to him closer to what the Kansas City and Denver game does. Because the Giants are good on wide receivers, I would look at him more between like the 11 to 15 points as opposed to like the 22 points he's gotten against Philadelphia and Miami, who are both not very good within the secondary.
Fair enough. I can definitely see that. I don't think you're wrong there. He's just a guy I just personally really like a lot. When he's healthy, I try to get him in whenever I can. But with that being said, like I said before, there's a couple of guys in the 6,500 range who I like a lot.
The Giants are awful against tight ends. So I brought up Hunter Henry on the public video, and I have interest in both Henry and Gates. The hard part is trying to pick out what they're going to do with them, but both very, very reasonable. So we move down from there. Doug Baldwin's a Giant no for me.
No interest.
Fitz, what do you think?
I mean, sure. I've heard some talk about people actually liking Arizona and Carson Palmer in this game. I don't have interest there. Like you just said, Philly is not great against the pass. I don't know, man. There's just a couple guys I like way more that are a little bit cheaper than Fitz here. Besides the monster game at Dallas, I don't see it.
Okay, and I'm going to actually pick this spot right here to say this is kind of your sweet spot within picking receivers this week. If you go Fitz, Cobb, Parker, Bryant, I like all of this guys. I think this is a great price range to take a look at this week. My top guy in this bunch, and if you haven't heard it by now, you're going to hear me hit at it over and over and over again. I think Devontae Parker might be the best overall value per dollar on this entire slate.
Yeah, I love Devontae Parker. Those are the two guys I'm talking about, Parker and Bryant. I agree with you in the sense that I like Cobb and Fitzgerald, but I just think that Bryant and Parker are the two guys that I am plugging into my lineups before anyone else probably. This is just a really good spot for Parker. And for Bryant, he has now become underrated. He was so overrated in the past that he is now underrated. I think that he's actually a lot better with Prescott than people thought he would be. He's looked really good to me. This is a primetime matchup for him. One of the best spots of the season for Bryant. I love Dez in this game.
So I got a love-hate relationship with Dez Bryant this week. And what I want to talk about is if you look at his receptions, we're talking about 16 receptions on 40 targets. That's horrible. That is really, really, really bad. But what I do like about him is the fact that Green Bay has a tendency to get absolutely destroyed by number one wide receivers. And if you remember the playoff game from last year, we had no answer for Dez at all whatsoever. Now, we might be getting Devon House back this week, which then doubles us up at decent cornerbacks, because last year against him in the playoffs, we had nothing. We were lining up this guy named Latarius Gunter as our number one cornerback, and he is so bad that he was cut this year. We cut our number one cornerback from the playoffs last year. We're that much deeper. So we should be improved. We should get Mike Daniels back this week, it sounds like, which should improve our pass rush. He's the best defensive player on Green Bay. So I think that that hurts Dez. But all that being said, Green Bay has given up some monstrous games to number one wide receivers. So I think Brian gives you huge value potential at that rate or at that price.
Yeah, for me, and obviously I'm going to wait for you. It's only Thursday right now. But when I'm looking at this slate, and there's a couple guys I like cheaper, I really want, and I agree with you, I'm not going to pay up for Odell or Antonio Brown at all. I'd love to pair Jordy with Parker and Bryant. That's my ideal wide receiver trio.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. The only issue with that then is I have to probably go down to one stud at running back, and it makes it hard to afford Aaron Rodgers as well. So it's going to be a lot about roster construction. But as I've mentioned, I think this is your sweet spot to check out receivers this week is this little part here, because Cobb is also in a really, really good spot, and he's back this year. And I talked about efficiency, 19 catches on 26 targets. That's a really high amount. He actually leads the Packers in receptions this year. And I love guys that come out and ball again. He's healthier again this week. And last week against Chicago, only 4 targets. Part of that comes from the fact that we just didn't really have to move the ball too much. We could run out the clock later in the game because we were up. We had short fields over and over again. And we were big efficiency. We just didn't really need to move the ball a lot.
Yeah, I guess my biggest problem with Cobb, and I like him, don't get me wrong, is that with Adams probably playing, I feel like Jordy's just the only safe guy there. I just know what Jordy's going to do. Cobb and Adams both could also be huge, but I feel it's usually one or the other with Jordy mixed in. So I just kind of stay away from both them personally.
Okay, and if you want to talk about the Green Bay Packers wide receivers, Jordy is always going to be your safest play. Him and Aaron they click with each other. They know each other very, very well. I look at Cobb as also an excellent cash game play week in, week out with his consistency, his high rate of catches on targets, and just overall higher usage. And then Devontae Adams is like your wild card. 10 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. GPP go for it type of receiver is the way I see the 3 guys.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's actually a couple guys I like that are a little bit cheaper than that also that I brought up to you earlier in the week. I'm not sure before we get to them, there's a couple guys in between there. Do you have interest in Crabtree or Golden Tate at all?
None and none.
Same here. I do, however, have interest in both these guys, Pierre Garçon and T.Y. Hilton. I like Garçon going back to Indy, and as I've mentioned to you a couple of times this week, I like Jacoby Brissett this week, so in turn, I like T.Y. Hilton a lot. We saw what he did against Cleveland. Obviously, San Francisco's not as bad as Cleveland. No one is, but I like this matchup for Indianapolis, and I like Hilton here for $6K a lot.
Okay, let's talk keep it simple, stupid for a second, guys. And we got Garçon and Hilton right next to each other, and I cannot get any more direct by saying Garçon in cash, Hilton in GPP.
100%. 100%.
Yeah,
no, I was just saying that exactly. 100% go ahead.
Hilton, and if you look at his stats, 57 yards, 49 yards, 153 yards, 30 yards. You cannot get anything more T.Y. Hilton than the microcosm what he's given us for the first 4 games. Helps you win a GPP week 3, sucks weeks 1, 2, and 4. That's T.Y. Hilton. That's why I hate him as a fantasy wide receiver. is because he's so big game oriented. Like he will win he'll be on the GPP winner 3 to 4 times a year, and he will cost people money the other 12 weeks. So he is the definition of a GPP wide receiver.
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you're looking at it, it's definitely Hilton and GPPs. I do think that he could have another game like this, like he did against Cleveland. But Garcon is definitely the safer play here. And honestly, just looking at the guys around them, Jarvis Landry is in a really good spot for the same price because we talk about going against Tennessee, and Cutler looks to Landry a lot. We like Parker more, but Landry is also a good play.
Yep. Going back to Pierre Garcon for a second, I've talked about this guy enough this year that you might think I got some sort of crazy man crush on him. What I like about Pierre Garcon is the new coordinator in San Francisco runs his offense through the number one wide receiver. Now, his lack of consistency early on this year is because he's gone up against 3 of the best defenses in football. Arizona, he got shadowed by Patrick Peterson, maybe the game's top cornerback. Seattle, I think we know, is still – they're not as good as they were, but they're still a really good defense. And Carolina has played some excellent defense in most of their games this year. The one game where he didn't go up against an elite pass defense, he went for 7 on 10 for 142. I see Garcon is a really safe play for 15 to 20 DraftKings points this week. I would see that 8 for 80 is very, very reasonable and an ideal building block for a cash game.
I completely agree. And just to piggyback your point on the sweet spot, I think you're definitely on point with that because if you look at the wide receivers today, there is really not much value you can go to, lower than 5K in my opinion. So I think it makes much more sense in terms of pricing to go with a couple guys in that range than to go with a higher guy and a lower guy.
For sure. So I lack any interest in Benjamin. Landry I'm fine with if you want to use him, and I will give him some play this week. And I brought this up on the public video. So hold on, I want to set up a side tangent, guys. Like we've had a nice run for 3 weeks in a row, and I've kind of touted my sick run on NFL the last really 20 main slates. It's not going to keep up forever. And I'll give you guys winners more than I'll give you losers in NFL, but it's not going to be 20 straight weeks of winning. That will end eventually. So what I just want to encourage people to do, and this is the dad side of me coming out, don't just keep shoving all your chips into the middle and win 5 straight slates than just to lose it all in one slate. So just be cautious with how much you're betting. Look at your long-term profitability, and don't just think because we've won easily 3 weeks in a row that means we're going to win easily this week. We could hit some injuries. Bad luck will come eventually. So that's my side note. But I just wanted to, I will use some Landry this week as well. I think that's kind of where I went off for a second.
No, you're right. You are awfully hot right now, though, but you're definitely right.
Yeah, I've made that mistake way too many times myself. And I used to do it myself playing poker for a living as well, way back in the day, where I would spend all week long, cleaning up at the $600 cash game tables. And then I'd go out and have some whiskeys on a Friday night and come home and sit down at the $2,000 table and take one bad beat and lose all your money on one hand. And you can do the same thing with DFS.
No, for sure. For sure.
Alshon Jeffrey, I got no love there. I think he'll be shadowed by Patrick Peterson.
Agreed. Not interested.
Devontae Adams only in GPP.
Same here.
Amari Cooper is useless.
Yeah, I'm not using Cooper until I see something from him.
Funchess, not at that price. Detroit's actually played some phenomenal defense this year.
Yeah, last week was the week to use Funchess, not this week.
Yep. Rashard Matthews, I'd call him playable, but at that elevated price, and we don't even know Mariota's status right now, I'm not looking at him.
I'll tell you what, if Mariota plays, I like him a lot more, obviously, but I actually think he's definitely playable simply because I think people are going to be off him because of last week, and those are situations I like to pounce on.
Yep, and that goes more back to what we talked about in the baseball video where I love cash games. I love consistency. I love keep it simple, stupid, but you always, you look for going the different way to try to win GPPs. And again, there's a million different ways to dominate DFS, and whatever works for you is the way you should play. But just because something works for me or something works for Matthew doesn't mean it works for you. We're all going to be different.
100%. I'm trying to find those angles, but I'm definitely following you in cash games right now.
All right. Williams, no, not at 5,300.
No.
Shepard, they've been doing a lot more 3-step drops in New York since they finally figured out they can't pass protect. So what that does is mean that these both Shepard, Marshall, and Beckham get to pile up more and more receptions. Maybe not as long of an average, but with more efficiency. So I don't love Sterling Shepard, but I don't think he's the worst play in the world at all. If there's something about him that you like this week and you found something that works, I'm not knocking him. I mean, he's got 12 catches on his last 15 targets. I love the efficiency right there.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you. I don't love him, but he's definitely playable. And a lot of it has to do with I don't really like a lot of the options around him or lower. So I think he's like the best guy around 5K.
If you go look at Beckham, he's got that questionable next to his name. That ankle and it dislocating a finger can have an effect on the way that your game works out. So is that John Brown participated in a limited capacity. I'd probably hold off on him a little bit more to see how healthy he is. But I guess if you were to play him, it would be strictly GPP.
Yeah, I mean, only GPPs, and that's not for the faint of heart. You got to really be willing to be risky on that one. I'm not using him.
Yep, and right there, JJ Nelson, same thing, but even riskier.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. If I'm using an Arizona receiver, it's Fitzgerald.
Yep. And Fitzgerald, to me, is very much in play this week, because that Philadelphia secondary is struggling, and he could very much emulate what Keenan Allen did last week.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely in play. Arizona's going to move the ball. I love those. I love Bryant and Parker. It's hard for me to get off them.
Yep. Okay. Alan Hearns. Hearns, all he does is catch touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like Hearns is too cheap here. I don't know why he's 4.7. Corey Coleman, who's hardly even played a game for the Browns, is more expensive than him. I don't get it. Hearns is in play here at that price.
Yep. And the efficiency is there, and then it's not there, and it's back and forth. And the thing with Jacksonville is you don't really know who they are yet. We've seen them both look really good and really bad at times this year. They're a young team struggling to find their identity. And my biggest issue with using him or Marquise Lee this week would be I think Pittsburgh is going to control the shit out of the clock this week, and that they're not going to get a ton of time on the field.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of think this goes back to what you were talking in a video the other day about using receivers against Denver. Unless they're in a really good matchup, I'm not really looking to use Jacksonville's receivers. Season long is different if you own one, but I'm not going out of my way to target one in DFS unless the matchup is really right. And against Pittsburgh, it's not.
Yep. Pittsburgh is currently ranked second against wide receivers. Again, though, this is what I love about football is you can go in here and you can granularly dissect each and individual matchup. Cleveland has no wide receivers. Chicago has no wide receivers. Baltimore has no wide receivers. Minnesota does, but that was Case Keenum's first game. So while they are ranked second against wide receivers, that's probably a little bit fraudulent right now. But they're not obviously terrible against wide receivers. So it's not the route I'm looking to go. But in a catch-up situation, if Jacksonville gets down 2 or 3 touchdowns and Pittsburgh just moves back into that cover 2, he could pile some things up and get you some junk time points, but still not like your perfect way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's too cheap, but I don't love it. This just goes back to what I was saying before. I'd rather use 2 mid-price guys than a guy like this than a higher-priced guy. I actually really don't have much interest in a lot of the guys around him. One guy that might pique your interest that I like a lot, depending on Devontae Adams' status, is Geronimo Allison. It seems like any time a dude is out for Green Bay, this dude goes Adams or Cobb is out. I feel like Rodgers and him have a really good connection. And in this game, if one of them are out, I'd love a piece of him.
Allison's he's physically very gifted too. He's a big, fast wide receiver, which is something we don't really have. We don't have Devontae and Jordy aren't small wide receivers, but they're not big guys either. So
I feel like the name Geronimo really fits that dude well.
Yeah. I like him when he plays. But I do think Devontae plays this week, and I'm just it's just a guess. I don't have any dead set information on that. But other guys you can look at down here, it's been a rough 2 games for Jermaine Kearse after a really nice start. But that Miami game had kind of a weird flow to it where they didn't have to throw. And then Jacksonville is very good against wide receivers. Cleveland, on the other hand, is horrible against wide receivers.
Yeah, honestly, a light bulb just went off in my head when you said Kearse, because we talked about this earlier in the week. I like your play of McCown at QB, and if you do that, I definitely like stacking him with Kearse, because Kearse is 4.5K. if you're using McCown, you have to have a little bit of faith in some of the Jets receivers. Curse is the best guy. You use McCown and Curse, I mean, you're looking really good salary-wise. So Curse is probably the guy there.
And I just want to go through a simple theory with you guys real quickly. And this is what I talk about with building lineups. So now that I can screen share with you guys, this is probably going to help a lot of you, I would think. So let's go through this theory. We plug in Josh McCown, Jermaine Curse, ASJ. You go grab a defense. The Lions are one of my big guys. So right now we are going with a stack of the New York Jets versus the Cleveland Browns secondary, where you can rattle off a McCown, a Curse, a Jenkins, and now you're up to almost $7K per offensive guy. So you can play a stud running back, go with a mid-tier guy, double up with some wide receiver studs, and hypothetically, if you were to even go with a Robbie Anderson, who's now questionable, let's just assume he plays. I mean, you're all the way up to 75 per guy. And if McCown goes off this week, I mean, all these low-cost guys from the Jets, you don't need that much from them. And if you look at them as a group where you're spending $12K, the idea of not getting 36 points out of these guys seems a little odd. Like, it's one of them is probably going to score at least one touchdown. Very likely two of them get into the end zone. And now you can go and you can do stuff like this. Like, you can grab a Le'Veon Bell. You could go with maybe Ezekiel Elliott. You can go over a wide receiver, grab Jordy Nelson, and then you move into your flex spot over here. And you pick out a flex spot, and let's just say you go with Gelman, for example, or wherever you choose, the kid from the Giants. Well, now you got Le'Veon Bell and Zeke, who could easily give you guys 60 points this week, and just the two of them, right? And then you got Jordy Nelson. I mean, you could get to 80 DraftKings points with just Nelson, Bell, and Elliott. And all you need is the Jets just to have a decent game through the air, which seems like a really viable option given how bad Cleveland is against the pass. And it's not just that they're bad against the pass. They're good against the run. So you have to strategize to attack them via the air.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's a little bit aggressive going Anderson and Curse and ASJ. I mean, that's just no respect for my Browns over here, but I can see why. I mean, that is aggressive. I'm not sure I could see that in cash, but hey, I mean, if that's
not in cash games, more like a GPP stack, and it's more like looking at it as like a group. You're just trying to pick up where the touchdowns go to.
No, I mean, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. It's just putting, I mean, as you say, it's putting a lot of your eggs in one basket. I don't usually like to go 4 deep on a team, but I mean, this, like you said, the Browns are awful against the pass, and in this situation, it's almost like a stars and scrubs type theory, but the guys on the Jets aren't necessarily scrubs, so I like it.
Yep, and it's just it's more of looking at it as a grouping as it is looking at it as individuals, Ben. And if the Jets suck, which, let's face it, the Jets aren't the greatest team in the world, but then you're out. You're no questions about it. That game's over. And I wouldn't do that in a cash game. That would be more of like a GPP theory. But let's say McCown goes 300 with 3 touchdowns, and one of the guys you pick gets 2 of those touchdowns, and the other one gets 1. I mean, you can work your way up there. But it's just an idea for you guys, just trying to give you some things to think about. So let's move our way down the receiver list. You brought up Allison already. I guess Jeremy Maclin, I mean, he's not the worst play in the world, given how bad the Raiders secondary is, but Joe Flacco just looks awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really slim pickings down here. I mean, Maclin, sure. I feel like Macklin's just a name at this point. I have no interest in him, to be quite honest. Yeah, if you're going to go with someone around this and you're throwing it at a dartboard, I'd rather use him than Marvin Jones. I'd certainly rather use him than Kenny Britt, but I'm really not looking here at all.
Cole Beasley hasn't done much this year, but he had some good games against the Packers. We weren't able to cover him. So I would only look to GPP because he's not getting a lot of targets. But, I mean, at this point when you're guessing, what else can you really look at?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not the worst play in the world.
Eric Decker's been useless so far. That's one you got to prove it to me first. Mike Wallace.
He finally came alive against Pittsburgh. I don't know. I mean, who would you rather use, Maclin or Wallace?
Macklin and Cash, Wallace and GPP, get that one long throw for a touchdown against that bad Oakland pass defense.
Sounds about right. I could see Wallace here.
I guess the other
go
thing
ahead.
you can think about is Oakland's going to have EJ Manuel out there this week. How much time are they going to be able to keep their offense on them?
Good point.
We're looking at shitty plays right now. So, I mean, all these guys, none of them are anywhere close to a lock.
Yeah, I really like it when a guy down here really stands out and you can plug him in. But there is just, I mean,
look at this. Jeremy Curley. That's another guy you can maybe take a look at. I love the efficiency. 13 catches on 13 targets this year. 2 straight weeks with 5 catches. Not much in the way of yardage, but again, at 3,900, if you need a plug-and-play type of guy, especially maybe if Anderson doesn't play, you could do worse.
Yeah, if Anderson doesn't play, I can see it, but I'm definitely using Curse over him for like $600 more. I mean, Curley efficiency might be there, but he hasn't gotten 10 in any game this year. So, like you said, though, we're looking at a guy that's 3.7K.
I'm not finding much down here at all. I mean, Robert Woods maybe.
Yeah,
as a smaller, quicker receiver.
I was thinking about Woods also. I watched. He looks pretty good. He passes the eye test to me. I've seen a lot of the Rams right now, and he looks like their number one guy a lot of times over Watkins.
And one of the things that the Seattle has struggled with is they tend to be very good against like the bigger wide receivers. A guy like I can't think of an example right now, like drawing a blank, but a bigger, more physical wide receiver, but a smaller guy, a little quicker guy, they have occasionally struggled against.
Interesting. I mean, I'm just looking down here to see if I can find any dark horse GBP plays. It's slim pickings, but Juju Smith-Schuster is, I guess, an option at 3.5K. He scored a touchdown last week. He was really good at USC. Ben Roethlisberger likes him a lot.
Averaging 10 DraftKings points over the last 3 games. So, I mean, yep. Again, if you're shooting darts, you could do worse. He's actually been on the field a lot too, so you could do worse.
They like him.
Yep, and Ben and AB are feuding right now, so maybe he tries to not give him the ball as much because he's like a whiny little baby lately.
Yeah, and let me ask you if you know, is Jacksonville really good against the pass total, or are they really good against number ones?
They're really just good against the pass because they got a pass rush and some good cornerbacks. That, and again, it goes back to they're so bad against the run that people just game plan to use the run against them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really looking to target much offense in this game, but that cheap, can't go wrong.
Bryce Butler for 3,500. Again, if you're throwing darts, I could see him getting into the end zone again. But again, it's not a great pick by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And I got nobody else after this. Maybe Cordarrelle Patterson if they're missing some wide receivers again for the Oakland Raiders, only because he had 6 catches on 6 targets last week. And if Crabtree or Cooper is out potentially for 3,100.
I mean, I cannot see playing Cordero here. I mean, is Cooper going to be? I haven't even heard. I mean, Crabtree.
You have to be missing one of the top 2 wide receivers.
I know Crabtree's going to be out. I'm hearing again, but Cooper's not. Wow. I mean, it's not even a guy I really looked at. But like you said, I guess he's in play only because no one else around him is even rosterable, and I guess he is. So that makes him
6 receptions last week because they had to get the ball out to him. And Baltimore is another pretty good defense, so I don't think they expect to have a lot of time. You get a subpar backup quarterback in there, and they're not going to tend to try to throw outside the numbers and go down the field. So you're going to hit him more on some bubble screens, hoping to break a big play. I'm assuming he still holds on to some of the kick and punt returner duties for them.
Yeah, you know what? This might be one I'm going to look deeper into because I don't like playing. I'm not going to play anyone on Oakland really with EJ Manuel at quarterback, but this guy might be the one guy you want because of what you just said. They might have to go really short, quick, drop down passes, and he's the guy they like there.
Yep, not everybody can be a quarterback god like Aaron Rodgers, where they can throw the ball 25 yards and hit those outs down the field. Some of these guys, they need to throw quick little bubble screens. And he does get rushing yards too. I mean, it's not a lot, but he does have 7 carries on the year, including a 43-yard touchdown run. So if you're playing guys at 3,100, obviously you're just hoping to get lucky. And one of the reasons I often double up at tight end is you can get more efficiency out of $3,100 tight ends than any other position. But again, if you're looking and you're desperate in a GPP and you need the cap space to fill your lineup, you could do worse.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that pretty much does it. I don't see
Yeah,
anybody else.
it pretty much does it. And I'm actually looking just right now at just flex, who's around 3,100. I mean, there's McKissick for Seattle, who looked good last week, but who knows? There's Tyler Croft. I mean, Antonio Gates is right around there at 33, but Cordero might be the best guy right there with what we just said. We're going to have to look deeper into that. It's only Thursday.
Or if you have to look at tight end and look at guys like maybe like a Julius Thomas starts to get more involved in the passing game, or Ed Dixon showed that he's a little bit more viable last week. But yeah, I mean, at 30,000, what are you trying to get out of somebody? You're not looking for much.
You're really just throwing darts at the dartboard.
So, all right, guys. Unless you got anything to add, I think that covers wide receivers, and we'll get tight ends and defenses probably out tomorrow.
Sounds good.
All right, later, guys. Thanks.
Later.